Right now, your phone is probably within arm's reach. Maybe it's on your nightstand, maybe it's already in your hand, and at some point tonight, probably after you've decided to sleep, you're going to pick it up. You won't plan to, you'll just do it. And here's what nobody tells you about that moment. It's not a weakness. It's not poor discipline. It's not a generation-defining character flaw that think pieces have been written about for the last 15 years. It is an ancient survival system firing in an environment it was never designed for. And understanding exactly what's happening, biologically, neurologically, historically, changes everything about how you see that moment. Let's go back 300,000 years. Your ancestors lived in a world where the night was truly dangerous. Not uncomfortable, not inconsistent, lethal. After dark, leopards hunt. Hyenas moved in packs. Snakes become invisible. And your ancestors, with their terrible night vision, their slow reflexes compared to apex predators, their soft, unprotected bodies, were near the bottom of the food chain once the sun went down. The ones who survived were not the bravest. They were not the ones who slept most deeply and peacefully through the night. They were the ones who stayed alert. The ones whose brains kept a low hum of vigilance ran even during sleep. The ones who woke at sounds, who scanned the darkness, who checked. That checking behavior isn't a flaw. It was the entire reason you exist. Every single one of your ancestors who slept too deeply, too trustingly, too disconnected from the environment around them, they didn't make it. The ones who woke up, looked around, assessed the situation, and only then returned to rest, those are the people whose DNA runs through you right now. You are, genetically, the descendant of the most anxious, most vigilant, most compulsive checking humans who have ever lived. That's not a metaphor. That's selection pressure operating hundreds of thousands of years. Now, here's where it gets precise. In 2012, a research team at the University of Chicago published a study on what they called the iPhone effect. Not the device specifically, but the behavioral pattern it represents. What they found was not that people were addicted to their phones in the way someone was addicted to a substance. What they found was that phones had become the primary object onto which people projected unresolved psychological tension. Unfinished tasks, unanswered questions, social uncertainty, the ambient anxiety of modern life. All of it pooled toward the phone. Because the telephone, unlike almost anything else in modern life, offered the possibility of resolution. Check the message, tension resolved. See the notification, uncertainty answered. Scroll the feed, mind briefly occupied, loop temporarily closed. The phone became the campfire, the point of safety in the dark, the thing you checked to confirm you were still okay. Your ancestors checked the perimeter for predators. You check your notifications. The neurological mechanism is functionally identical. But here's what makes it worse. Much worse. The phone doesn't just satisfy the checking impulse. It actively prevents you from stopping. In 2017, a former design ethicist at Google named Tristan Harris testified before the US Senate and described in technical detail exactly how the major platforms were engineered to exploit this checking reflex. Variable reward schedules, the same psychological mechanism that makes slot machines impossible to stop pulling. Here's how it works. When a reward is predictable, you pull the lever, you get the coin, every time. The brain habituates to it quickly. The dopamine hit decreases. You stop. But when the reward is unpredictable, sometimes you pull and nothing happens, sometimes you pull and get something amazing, the brain cannot habituate. The dopamine system stays activated between pulls, not just during them. It is the anticipation of the variable reward that hooks you, not the reward itself. Every time you open Instagram, sometimes there are 30 new things. Sometimes there were 2. Sometimes someone you haven't thought about in years just liked a photo from 3 years ago. Sometimes nothing.
Your brain cannot predict which it will be, so it keeps pulling. Not because you're weak, because you were handed a slot machine designed by some of the most sophisticated behavioral engineers on Earth, built specifically to exploit a survival mechanism 300,000 years in the making. And they put it on your nightstand. Now, layer on top of this the specific problem of nighttime.
During the day, your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for rational decision-making, impulse control, long-term thinking, acts as a governor on the checking impulse. You're distracted by other things: work, conversation, tasks that occupy the mind. The impulse fires, but it gets overridden. At night, that governor goes offline. Sleep deprivation and the pre-sleep state both reduce prefrontal activity. Your capacity for impulse control diminishes sharply. The rational brain that can say, "I don't need to check this right now," gets quieter. And the ancient subcortical checking impulse, the one that kept your ancestors alive, gets relatively louder. It's not that you're weaker at night. It's that the rational override that counterbalances the impulse is no longer fully operational, and the impulse is still at full strength. A completely unfair fight. Here's the part that compounds everything else: the light. Your retina contains a specialized class of cells called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. These cells evolved specifically to detect the blue wavelength light present in the dawn sky, the biological signal for morning. When they detect it, they send a direct signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, your brain's master clock, which then suppresses melatonin production and begins preparing the body for an active day. Your phone emits intense blue wavelength light directly at your eyes from approximately 8 inches away at 11 p.m. Your brain cannot distinguish between the blue light of a sunrise and the blue light of a screen. The signal is the same. The response is the same. Every time you check your phone after dark, you are sending your nervous system a chemical message that says, "It is morning. Time to be awake. Suppress sleep. Prepare for activity." And melatonin, the hormone that initiates sleep, takes approximately 90 minutes to rebuild after suppression. So every check resets the clock. Every scroll delays sleep onset by up to 90 minutes. Not subjectively, biologically, measurably, in your blood. A 2014 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences followed 2 groups of people, one reading printed books before bed, one reading on backlit screens. The screen readers took significantly longer to fall asleep, spent less time in REM sleep, felt less alert the following morning, and had melatonin onset delayed by an average of 90 minutes.
Same content, same activity, one light source versus another. The difference in sleep quality was the difference between a full night's rest and a mild form of sleep deprivation, multiplied across every night, across months and years. And here's the number that should stop you. The average American checks their phone 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes during waking hours. But the frequency spikes are heard in the 2 hours before bed and the first 30 minutes after waking. The 2 most biologically critical windows of the day, the windows that set your circadian rhythm, that determine melatonin timing, that calibrate your nervous system for the next 24 hours. Those are exactly the windows the phone has colonized most completely. Not by accident, by design. The engineers who built these products understood, from their own internal research, that the pre-sleep and post-waking windows were peak vulnerability periods for engagement. The mind is less defended. The impulse to check is highest. The rational governor is partially offline. They are optimized for those windows specifically. A 2021 investigation by the Wall Street Journal revealed that Facebook's internal research showed the platform was most effective at driving engagement and most effective at generating anxiety and social comparison during exactly these hours. They knew.
They published the research internally, and then they continued optimizing for those windows anyway. So here's the full picture of what happens when you reach for your phone tonight. An ancient impulse-checking fires, designed by 300,000 years of selection pressure to keep you alive in the dark. Completely appropriate for the environment it evolved in. Completely misdirected in the environment you're actually in. A variable reward system engineered by some of the most well-funded behavioral scientists in history activates the same neurological pathway as a slot machine. Blue light suppresses melatonin and sends a dawn signal to your biological clock. Your prefrontal cortex, already partially offline in the pre-sleep state, cannot mount sufficient resistance. And you check. And then you check again. And somewhere between the third and fourth check, you realize 30 minutes have passed, and you're not even sure what you were looking for.
Because you weren't looking for anything specific. You were doing what your ancestors did every night for 300,000 years. Scanning the dark, checking the perimeter, making sure everything was still okay. The predators are gone. The impulse never got the update. And the people who built your phone knew that. They studied it, they mapped it, and they built something that fits into that ancient scanning reflex so precisely that distinguishing the impulse from the device is almost impossible from the inside. You weren't designed to be bad at this. You were designed to survive a world that no longer exists, and handed a tool built by people who understood that better than you did. That's not a moral failure. That's not lazy. That's what it looks like when 300,000 years of survival programming meets a $3 trillion industry that figured out exactly how to aim at it. The next time you catch yourself reaching for the phone in the dark, you don't have to judge yourself. You can just notice it. The ancient part of your brain is checking the perimeter, looking for the predators, finding only a screen. And the screen, very quietly, looking right back.